What up, YouTube? It is your boy JB. We are here today with the review for Kandi and the Gang, Season 1, Episode 3. The episode is titled Rowdy Managers and Uptight Employees, you guys. Now, before we go ahead and get into this review, if you guys are watching this video or any other on my channel and you guys are not subscribed to my channel, I'm going to need you guys to do me that solid favor and stop taking me out on this date and having me pay for it at the end of it. Now, you guys know you can do me that favor by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, turning on your post notifications, and sharing the video. And you guys, with that out the way, without further ado, let's get into the episode, shall we? Actually, before we get into the episode, I have learned the theme song. The theme song is Don't You Wanna Go to the Place to Be Where Strangers Become Family Over Fried Chicken and Mac and Cheese. Won't you and your family come and hang with Kandi and the Gang? I got it. All right, you guys. So this episode, we picked up literally where we left off last week. Now, you guys remember in last week's episode that Philip and Torin were having that conversation, right? And like I said last week, there's equal blame to go around, right? Because Torin, he could have, when he walked into that room, he could have, said hi to Philip, introduced himself to Philip, right? But he didn't. And then Philip, he came off very strong, right? And then when they did sit down and have the conversation, Torin introduced himself then, and he says, well, he was talking to Philip about introducing himself, and Philip was like, I'm not the one doing the interview, and Torin was like, neither am I. Now, I'm gonna be real and honest. Philip was rude in this. Definitely when we picked up the episode this week, Philip was rude as shit to Torin for no fucking reason, right? Torin, talks about he was just rude the way he was talking to the man, right? And for me, when it comes down to it, when you look at it, it's almost like Philip thinks he's up here, right? And everyone else is below him, right? And like I said last week, Philip just has to learn how to talk to people. That's the real thing. Philip has to learn how to talk to people. Because in management, like I've had managers similar to Philip, right? Where they have a terrible way of having communication, right? They want to, like I had one manager, she was like, she's direct. I'm like, I'm direct too, right? But don't confuse being direct with being rude and condescending, right? Because that's what Philip was doing. Philip was being rude and he's kind of been condescending, right? So then we see Torin. So Torin, he goes and has a conversation with Kandi, and he tells Kandi about what happened with him and Philip, right? Then we see Philip when he had a conversation with Don Juan. And the fact that he called that dude Big Bird, I was like, you know what? That was a good one, right? Because him and that bright yellow sweater does look like Big Bird, right? So then Philip tells Kandi and Don Juan, well, no, Kandi and Todd. Or who was he? No, it was Kandi and Don Juan. He told them that y'all have to deal with Torin because he's not, because he doesn't like him. And I'm like, really, Philip? That's the management styles in this restaurant are interesting, to say the least, right? The management styles are very interesting. And I don't know how this restaurant is. We gonna talk about that. I don't know how this restaurant is surviving. Watching this episode, I just don't know how this restaurant is surviving. Because I can see why they get them health food inspections that they get, right? We'll talk about that in a little bit, right? Like I said, and I'm continuing to say it, Philip, he just came out very strong. That's really what it is. He came out very strong. But so did Torin, and I think that it was like a pissing match, whose dick is bigger thing, right? It didn't have to go that way. Torin could have, introduced himself to Philip, right? Philip could have, and the thing that I was thrown off about with Philip, right? So Philip is like, he doesn't have to, run down his resume to him, right? But even when you go into a job, right? If you're starting a brand new job, right? Your manager tell you, hey, my name is so and so. I've been with the company this amount of years, right? I started out here, then I went here, then I went here, and now I'm here. Stuff like that, right? Or if you get a brand new manager to your team, right? They come in, they'll be like, hey, I'm so and so, I don't know, I'm getting to know you guys, right? But I want to go around and tell us about each other, like, where you came from, what brought you here, and education and stuff like that, right? So Philip could have had that conversation. It's not like, but again, like I said, it's kind of as if Philip is up here and everyone else is down below him, right? That's just the vibe that I get, right? So then we move over. Now, in last week's episode, right, we met Patrick and Melvin officially. Did Patrick and Melvin just move into this apartment because that apartment was empty? And I didn't realize it last week, right? I guess because they didn't show us the full view of the apartment, right? But it looks like they just moved into this apartment, right? So Patrick has Torrin over, and what he wants for Torrin to do is he wants for Torrin to decorate the apartment, right? And then he also wants to have a housewarming party that he's going to invite, the rest of the staff over, right, for that house party. Okay. That's it. Let's move forward. Let's pause here and move forward. All right, guys. So here is the big $1 million question that I have. How in the hell is OLG operating, right? So we see Chandrika and we see Chandrika. I believe we saw Philip. I know we saw Brandon and we saw Brian, right? So we saw Brian. Brian was behind the bar. I'm like, where is Dom at? And I know Dom is probably not the only bartender that they have, but for the sake of the show, well, no, because even with Vanderpump Rules and other shows, I know they have other bartenders, right? They just don't highlight them. You might see them in the background, but my question was, actually, how many bartenders do y'all have on duty during the day or at any point, right? Because from every episode that we've saw, it's only been Dom, right? It's only been Dom. So I'm like, is Dom the only? I know Dom is not the only bartender. Y'all don't have, because most restaurants you go to, they have at least one or two bartenders behind the bar. No, not even one. They usually have two, right? You have, because restaurants that I go to, like Cheddar's, for example, there's always two people behind the bar. But with Kandi and the gang, we've only seen Dom behind the bar, right? So Chandrika told Brian, hey, we ain't got no bartender. And then we see Brandon, right? They asked Brandon, and I guess they didn't have a busser either because, she was talking about his table, right? I'm like, so damn, y'all got, well, but you know what, JB, think about it. We are in a pandemic. We're still, despite the fact that people don't want to talk about it, we are still in a pandemic, right? So, and like I said in another video a few months ago, right? I know that, things are hard right now because when I go out, the bartender is either they're bartending, they are a server, and they're doing, they're waiting on the tables, right? So I know that this pandemic has, contributed to that, right? But with this situation, could they ask Brandon, who made the schedule? He said, I did. They were like, where's Dom? He was like, she's coming. She's gonna be a little late. So then at one point he FaceTimed Dom and she was like, she just got through dancing, right? And she's on her way there, but she's gonna be a little bit later. When she showed up, she was a whole hour late. I'm like, oh my God. Do y'all enforce any kind of anything in this restaurant, right? So then at one point they noticed that Brandon was texting somebody. They're like, Brandon, who you texting? He was like, I'm texting somebody about the sink that's clogged. I'm like, the sink is clogged? And then when they showed us that footage that they panned on that sink, I was like, ugh, that is nasty. So how are y'all washing these dishes? Are y'all even washing the dishes once they're? That was so nasty to me. I was repulsed. Ugh. I mean, ugh. You just see shit just piled up. So then when Dom got there, she looked at the bar, and behind the bar, it was filthy. You had dirty, and just like I just said a few minutes ago about the sink being nasty. I'm like, are y'all washing the dishes? Y'all are not washing them dishes because you saw them dirty ass dishes on the ground. I'm like, what the fuck, Kandi and Todd? This is why y'all this is why y'all gotta see. This is why y'all gotta see. This is the prime example of why y'all gotta see and y'all fail inspections. Like, God, I keep saying, I don't really know that this show is helping their, I just don't know that the show is helping the business. It could be, and it could be, but I think, what we can say is, for Kandi and Todd, this might be a good thing for them in the long run, right? Because it can highlight to them what they need to work on. You need to work on that generator, number one, and your staff. Your staff is running wild and rampant. Like, I just don't. But I see why y'all got that C. That sink, when y'all knew that sink was clogged, y'all should have immediately got on that, Brandon. Because then at one point you see Brandon behind the bar, he's eating. At the bar eating. I'm like, dude, what the hell? You're on the clock and you're eating. That is unprofessional, right? And then what is that? What message does that send to your staff? That sends a message to your staff that, oh, Brandon is a general manager. Brandon is sitting up here with the rest of the patrons eating, right? So I guess we can do that, right? And we're gonna talk, and it's gonna come up a little bit later in the episode, right? But yeah, y'all got to get it together, right? So then at one point, Philip pulls Brandon aside to talk to him with the other manager, right? The intern manager, I believe that's what they said, Tamika. So he asked Brandon, how does he feel the day is going? He says he feels like it went smoothly. I was like, what? You think that this has gone smooth? Your bartender was late. So that means if people wanted drinks, they had to sit there and wait. Well, no, they did not have to wait because Brian got behind the bar. And we learned Brian's story in this episode, but why would you? I'm not even finna go there. I just, okay. Yeah, not gonna go there. Now, I will say though, in this scene with Philip and Brandon, the way that Philip was communicating with Brandon, that's how you should communicate with everyone else, right? Just because they're hourly employees, just because they're a bartender, just because they're a busser, just because they're a server, just because they do this, doesn't mean you can't you can still have your managerial title and your role, right? You can still, you can still tell them what needs to be done in a restaurant, right? But it's the way in which you approach that. That's the key. It's how you approach things. And the way he was talking to Brandon, I like that. And I wish he would just implement that with the other staff members. Because granted, they do have this preconceived, they have these, they're going, for me, this is my personal opinion. For me, it feels like they're going off of what other people have said about, Philip, right? Because, Chandrika had her issue with Philip. So it's kind of like, I have my issue with him. I don't really rock with him like that, right? But then you say, you should get to know him. Don't even include that you have an issue with him, right? Just say, me and Philip, I'm not going to speak on that. What I want you to do is I want you to go in there, you to meet Philip, you to have your interaction with Philip. It could be good. Who knows? He might like you, right? He and I just probably didn't gel, right? But don't lead with that. Just say, hey, because somebody say, how was Philip as a manager? He's okay. I mean, I might say he's strict or stern, right? But go in there and form your own opinion of him, right? And that would be that. So we're going to pause here and we're going to move forward, you guys. All right, you guys. So then we see everyone, with the exception of Philip, go hang out. And I don't think the other guy, Rashard, was there, right? So everyone shows up. So Torrin at one point asked Dom if Brandon, she says, is he my man? Ha! No. I was like, come on, Dom. Come on, Dom. I fucks with Dom. I love Dom. I love me some Dom, right? So then when everyone is there, Patrick tells everyone, hey, so you guys, I'm having a housewarming party. So I want to invite everybody. And everybody, when I say everybody, we see, who do we see there? So Patrick, Melvin, Torrin, Brandon, Dom, who else? It wasn't no Shardo and no Philip, right? So we had June, who is Chandrika's fiance, right? He was there. So Chandrika let us know that, her man, June, and Patrick had a little bit of an interaction with each other a year ago. And it's so interesting to see this, right? I didn't realize that they started filming in 2020, right? Oh, yes, I did. They did start filming in 2020, right? They literally started filming before the pandemic hit, right? Because I remember now. Because the Real Housewives of Atlanta season 12 reunion, that's why Nene was so fucking pissed off, right? She wanted to say that it was because people want to say she was talking about Kim getting her spinoff, right? But by that point, hadn't Kim's spinoff been canceled? Which I still don't understand why Kim had a spinoff, but that ain't got nothing to do with me, and I ain't even finna go into that, right? So, we're gonna move forward, you guys. So Brandon, right? Remember I was telling you guys a few minutes ago that Brandon was eating at the bar, right? So we see Brian and we see Richard, right? They're sitting at the bar, and Brandon comes up to them and says, "Hey, you guys know you can't be at the bar, right?" And they look at him like, "What you talking about, Willis?" That's kind of how Brian was looking at him. But Shardo didn't give him, Shardo got up and he left, right? But Brandon was like, I mean, not Brandon, but Brian was like, you just sat here the day before and ate your food. He's like, well, I'm a manager. See, here's the thing. If you want your staff to follow your lead, you gotta first lead by example, right? And you eating at the bar, that's not if they're not allowed to eat at the bar, why are you eating at the bar, right? That just sends a message to them like, well, shit. If the GM, if he can sit his happy ass up here and eat at the bar, why can't I? You gotta lead by example, right? So then we see Brandon. So Brandon went and told Philip what happened, right? And he didn't correct the situation right then and there, right? So then we see Philip. Philip went and talked to Don Juan, and they had a conversation. So then Philip, Don Juan, and Brandon all had a conversation with Brian. Now, like I said, I get what they're saying. They were telling, they were telling Brian like, hey, Brandon told you to, get up from the bar, and you had an attitude with him, right? Now, granted, he shouldn't have had an attitude with him, right? That's number one. He shouldn't have had an issue with Brandon telling him telling him not to do that. But as I stated before, Brandon also has to take some accountability as well. You sat there and ate at the bar, right? If it's not right for the quote unquote staff to eat there, right, it shouldn't be okay for the manager to eat there, right? It should not be okay for the manager. It shouldn't be. It should not be. You can't make a rule for one. You can't make just a rule for them to follow and you not adhere to it as well. Like it's gotta be even all around, all across the board, right? So I got what they were saying, but I think Philip saw Brandon at the bar. I want y'all to keep that same energy, right? Keep that same energy with Brandon. I just didn't like that scene, and I definitely didn't like the way that Philip was talking to Brian, right? Again, it's that condescending tone, right? It is that condescending tone. Now, granted, Brian was trying to be funny when I think Philip said he's been in his shoes before. He says, you ain't been in my shoes. You wear a size 8. He was being funny, right? But Philip got upset, right? And Philip told him, well, you can go home. You're suspended. Because he can't fire him. I'm like, oh my God, Philip. You and this power. You're like a dictator. And I don't really like it that much. It's just not a great look. It really ain't. It really ain't. So then we move over to another scene and we see Patrick. So he goes to Safari's business, right? It's going to be a quick scene. So she has her little business. So she does non-surgical lipo and all that kind of stuff, right? And she does some on him. So then he tells her about Torrin decorating his place. She feels that she should decorate the place. Then he tells her about inviting everyone to the housewarming party, including Chandrika, who he had entanglement with, right? She says she don't want her there. He says, okay, so we disinviting her? She said, yep, so I guess Chandrika ain't coming to the party. I don't even know if Chandrika would really give a shit, but hey, it is what it is. So I'm going to pause here, you guys, and we're going to wrap up the episode. All right, you guys, so the episode, we are going to conclude it with, so we're going to move over and we're going to talk about Chandrika, right? So we see Chandrika. So Chandrika tells us she's a swim instructor. I was like, you're a swim instructor? Girl, I hope you have a better attitude than what you have at OLG, because damn, I would not take swim lessons from you. I just really wouldn't. But you know what? When we saw her in the pool, because she's over at Mama Joyce's house, right? Aunt Nora and Aunt Bertha are there. Dom shows up and showed us Kandi, right? When we see them in the pool and Mama Joyce Mama Joyce just moving them arms, right? And when we see Chandrika, I was like, wow, this is a different Chandrika than what we see at OLG. She was smiling. She was, she was jovial and all that stuff. I'm like, this is a completely different Chandrika. She ain't got no attitude. I'm like, maybe what it is she probably, girl, if you hate your job, quit. That's the easiest thing I can tell you, right? If you hate your job, quit that motherfucker, right? Quit that damn job, right? So they're doing water aerobics, right? So after they do the water aerobics, they sit down and they talk about Philip, right? So, Chandrika is talking about that Philip suspended, actually we're talking about Philip because of him suspending Brian, and I guess Kandi didn't know anything about that, right? So then, they talk about Chandrika and her and Philip's issue, right? Because Mama Joyce said, have you done what you did? You stopped what you were doing, right? And Chandrika's like, I didn't do anything. And Chandrika, that is a motherfucking lie, right? You had an attitude when you first saw Philip. You said you don't like him, right? Then you can continue to talk shit in front of him to Dom behind the bar, right? So he told you your services were no longer needed for that day. But she says she doesn't interact with Philip, right? I guess if that's what you got to do, but that is your manager. Well, you know what? I can't even talk, right? I cannot talk because I had a manager when I was working at Hertz. She and I butted heads so much, right? And I got to the point where I just didn't talk to her. I texted my area manager. I'm like, you know what? I've had enough disrespect from this woman. I said, my own mother doesn't even talk to me that way. And I'd be damned if somebody else is going to talk to me in a condescending, demeaning way. Because one day, this crazy ass biatch, I'm not going to call her what I want to call her, this crazy ass woman, I was in our break room, and that's when I stopped eating at our location. I would leave the location every day because I would cook for myself. I would leave and go somewhere else and eat my fucking food, or either eat in my car, right? This woman came into the break room one day and said to me, I can make, well, she was talking about at the workplace, right? She was like, I can make it a living hell for you. Baby, you can't make nothing a living hell for me because you don't frighten me. You don't put no fear in me. Like, let me put that out there for you. You don't put no fear in me, so you can't make shit a living hell for me. But that woman literally told me she can make this a living hell for me. I'm like, you can't do, and I looked at her, I said, you can't do that. I'm like, you literally can't make anything a living hell for me because you're not my mother and I don't fear you. So you can't make my life a living hell at this job. Because, baby, I can quit today and go find me another job. But I outlasted her. Keep that in mind. So yeah. It could work, but I don't think it would, right? Baby, Bertha in her interview with the interview with the three of them, I know her Mama Joyce like Philip, right? Bertha said, I can't stand him. And you can put it on here that I said I can't stand him. I was like, oh my God, but I love Aunt Bertha, right? So then we see the end of the episode. We see Brian and Torrin, they go out, right? So my heart really went out to Brian, right? Because Brian has been through a lot. He talked about his alcohol use and he talked about drug use, right? And I was like, oh my God. But I still love his spirit and his personality. He is just, from what I can see, he seems like an amazing person, right? So he tells, Torrin about, Philip suspending him, right? But then he also talks about, what happened to him during the pandemic, right? So I guess they lost communication during the pandemic because of Brian's drinking, right? And, he asked him what helped you get clean. And Brian tells him that his sister is what helped him get clean, right? His sister, I think he said, did he say 49 or 39? One of those two, right? I can't remember the age. But she took her own life. And I was like, oh my God. And he said when they found her, there was an empty bottle of vodka beside her. I was like, oh. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, what kind of demons was she battling? God rest her soul. Like, I pray for him, I pray for his family, and I pray for her. But that's it, you guys. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode of Kandi and the Gang, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe, you guys. Please take care of yourselves. Remember to wash your hands, you guys. Wear a mask, socially distance, be blessed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.